Hello and welcome to the MRO show presented by Chadwell Supply. I'm your host, Adam Porter. Chadwell Supply is 100% dedicated to the multifamily community. Your order is on our truck, delivered the next day. Today on the MRO show, we are going to be talking about A2L refrigerants, and with me to have that conversation, I'd love to welcome back Kelsey Pearlman with AirQuest. Kelsey, it's great to see you again.
Adam, it's great to see you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having us.
So I know last time we chatted was at our trade show about a year ago, and AirQuest and your parent company Carrier had some big things going on and how you're addressing this A2L transition that is the hot topic in residential refrigerant these days. And talk about where you were. So you guys got a little bit of a head start, if I recall correctly. Talk to me a little bit about where you were a year ago. Sure.
A lot of changes is an understatement, right? Especially for everyone in this industry. We all know that. We were in a really good place last year with testing. I will say, we actually fully deployed our entire line to date now. So in production last year, all of our ducted and ductless solutions. So we started out with our heat pumps, and those actually deployed in March of 2024. So our first A2L product line was released early Q1, or I should say late Q1 in March, still Q1.
Yes.
And then our southern ACs actually came out in the summertime. And then our northern ACs most recently came out. Ductless has been available for a while now in A2L. So we actually have fully deployed the entire line at this point.
So a fast start addressing this A2L transition, and you have the equipment. Now the full line is available for multifamily customers to go out and take a look at?
Not only multifamily, but all customers. And we were the first to release AHRI ratings as well. So really wanted to, I don't want to say beat everyone to the punch, but want to be fully prepared for the transition.
Well, preparation is really important. There's a lot of questions out there, and a lot of the questions center around what's my choice going to be? And most of our major manufacturers have made a choice, and they've gone after one of the available options for A2L refrigerants. And Carrier and AirQuest have chosen R454B. Talk to me a little bit about why that choice was made and why AirQuest chose to go in that direction.
Sure. Yeah, and there are a couple different reasons why we chose that one. And as you look at GWP's, right, global warming potential, the EPA actually regulated that it has to be 700 or lower. And 454B is at 466. So it's well below that threshold of 700. And we chose that hoping that it's going to last us through the next phase down.
So what I hear you saying, Kelsey, is that Carrier as a whole has looked over the history of refrigerant transitions in residential refrigeration, and which includes multifamily. And it looked and said, there's been some changes. We've seen some changes every certain amount of time that come through, and you have a new refrigerant that's come out that's introduced into the industry, a lot of times, in fact, most of the time, for an environmental reason. So R454B has a lower global warming potential number. And so you're anticipating that that's going to be available and going to be within the parameters.
Yeah, and the other option, R32, is still below that threshold as well, but it's at 650. And so we chose 454B, hoping that that'll last us longer than if we would have chosen R32.
So we've thrown out a lot of numbers. Let's go back, and we said R454B, if I heard you correctly, and hopefully I get an A on this test, 466 is a GWP number for R454B?
You aced it, 466.
So that's going to be, if you're trying to remember what it is, what's the GWP number? It's a lot like 454B. It's 466 for 454B. So one of the questions that a lot of our customers are asking, Chadwell Supply has done a lot of live events where we've invited maintenance professionals to ask our experts about this transition. And a lot of them are asking, okay, why should I trust this new refrigerant? It's new for one thing. It's an A2L rated mildly flammable refrigerant for another thing. I have some questions about safety, and I have some questions about reliability. Kelsey, help us answer those questions.
Absolutely. Change is scary. Change is scary for everyone, right? It's a big deal. And so with A2L refrigerants, they're classified as mildly flammable, which has caused some, a lot of emotions in the field, right? A lot of people are very nervous. I want to say there's no propane in these units. It is not going to blow up, right? But they are mildly flammable. And so all manufacturers are actually regulated to add a dissipation system or a sensor system to their units. And this is basically a leak detection system. So if there's a leak in that refrigerant, right, essentially these sensors will catch it. They'll turn the system off. The fan will blow off the refrigerant and make sure nothing happens. Along with that, there are a couple of new tools, right? And a couple of things that Carrier is actually leaning towards. We've made a couple of updates to our units to allow for, we'll call maybe sparkless connections or quick fit connections.
Nice.
And so kind of moving towards that, brazing is still fully acceptable, right? But I understand that maybe technicians aren't as comfortable with that because the units are mildly flammable. So we're trying to reduce that brazing in the field.
And so when we're talking about mildly flammable, again, anybody can go on YouTube and you see these really crazy over-the-top videos that people are trying to say that they're using propane tanks and they're blowing them up and they're trying to say this is A2Ls. That's not the case. It's low flame propagation for an A2L refrigerant, where while yes, it is not an A1 non-flammable, it is mildly flammable, but it has a very low flame propagation. It's not going to explode like you see people shooting their propane tanks on YouTube.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I don't have the chart in front of me, but as you look at it, propane obviously is at the very bottom of the chart and we're in A2Ls, right? So you're still quite a few levels above propane in the flammability chart. And in terms of, being a little nervous and that new refrigerant coming into the field, so 454B is a blend of R32 and R1234YF, which is actually what's used in our automobiles today. So I don't want to say it's a, brand new refrigerant. Yes, it is. It's a blend, but there are components of it that have been used in different, we'll call it, whether it's a fridge, right? Or whether it's a car, they have been used kind of in our everyday lives that we haven't really noticed.
Right. Well, like you said, these other component refrigerants have been around for a while. Like R32 has been around since 2012. And the other refrigerant you said is used in automobiles. Most of us who have a relatively late model car have it in our vehicle already. We don't even know. We're driving around. It's safe. It's reliable. It's keeping us cool in those hot summer times. So it's not something, it's part of our lives already.
Exactly.
And so we talked also about refrigerant blends. So this is going to be, for those who do make this choice, and eventually the choice is going to be made for us. It is going to replace 410A. 410A, also a blended refrigerant. So this is going to be similar to what the technicians in the field are already using.
That is correct. Yeah, and actually has similar operating temperatures and pressures as 410A. So it'll be a much easier transition for technicians in the field.
So similar. Now, we do want to say, it's a little bit of a disclaimer here. We do want to say, because you mentioned spark-free earlier, and I appreciate you dropping that. I do want to come back to it. If you are going to be using tools to work on this equipment, anytime you potentially might get into the refrigerant line, you want to have non-arcing, non-sparking tools. So most of our hand tools are going to be okay. But if we're talking about vacuum pumps, that sort of thing, we want to make sure we're non-arcing, non-sparking. It's a good safety measure because we want to make sure that we do have our good safety protocols. That's not to say it's unsafe. This is something that A2L refrigerants have been used around the world for a long time now, many, many years. We know you talked about the R32 as a component in this, and that's been around since 2012. This blend, R454B, if I recall correctly, was manufactured around, I think, 2018.
I believe so. So we've actually been testing it since 2018 in the field. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it was a 2017 creation, but we have been testing it since 2018. So it's proved reliable, right? It's been around for a couple of years, maybe not readily available, but it's been around for testing.
7 years is not last week.
Sure.
So, and this is something that you guys are putting out mass marketing. It's a safe, reliable, well-tested refrigerant, and not for nothing. It's a refrigerant that was developed for this transition. So we've talked about safety. We've talked about familiarity. Let's talk a little bit about what can our technicians expect to see when they're working on this equipment. Is there going to be a different? Is it going to be similar? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the flammability part of it always really comes to mind, right? But in terms of what, like we said, similar, not the same, but similar operating temperatures and pressures, the way that you install a system really isn't going to be much different. But I will say our units have a couple differences on them, especially the multifamily, mostly related to quick connect.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so those copper stub outs that we have on our, I'll call it present day units, the 410A ones, used to have more of a bell piping. Now it's going to be straight piping, and they're actually longer to allow for that quick connect. I think you have to cut part of it, right, and actually connect the quick connector. Some people call them shark bites onto the units. And so that'll really help technicians. I would say there are minor changes. There are a couple changes, right, a couple safety measures as we talked about sparkless tools, but it really is not going to be drastically different than what they do today.
So while, yes, some of the numbers are going to be different, some of the classifications are going to be different, at the end of the day, they're going to be installing a refrigeration system and equipment that is going to feel familiar.
Absolutely. And the same protocol should be used, right? When you back the system, I mean, even the line sets, if you have 410A line sets, you are able to use those same line sets for 454B. But disclaimer, please vac the system. Please clean the system. But with that being said, a lot of the same protocols, right, that you would have had before and the same safety measures still continue. It's just there are a couple of added safety measures.
And sure. And that's, like you said, that's good practice. Anytime you're changing any refrigerant, you want to make sure you've cleaned the system out completely before you put the new refrigerant in.
Absolutely.
And so looking ahead, and we've talked a lot about what the maintenance technicians might be asking, what they might be thinking about. From a standpoint from property managers, property owners, looking at this big picture, what are some reasons why ownership might find R454B the right choice for their properties?
Sure. I think when we talk about longevity, right, and you look at maybe the phase down of the GWP, keeping those units in their properties, having parts available for them, right? What comes to mind is the longevity of those units. They'll be available for years to come. There's not going to hopefully be any major product changes to those, right? Because we're hoping that it's actually going to meet that GWP requirement for the next phase down. So I would say in terms of consistency, a lot of times those property managers, right, they want a nice look at their apartment complexes. You don't want we'll call it a condenser farm of different brands and different colors. So for looks, and then also it's really easy to work on one single brand, right? So we're hoping to kind of keep that longevity, keep those technicians used to working on our units, being able to quickly service them. And then also just having them around for a very long time and parts available for them.
So if they're looking out there and they're wanting to have more consistency, all the different condensers sitting out there on the pads, looking about the same, feeling about the same, or they have a team that's more accustomed to working on a Carrier product, they might feel more comfortable with that. There's some brand loyalty there. And let's face it, Carrier's a well-known name. It's been a well-known name in refrigeration for a long time. There's reasons for that. A lot of good reasons. A lot of people have an affinity for that brand and they want to be able to support that. AirQuest is a good quality, especially for multifamily communities, to be able to go out and have something that they know that they're familiar with.
Absolutely.
And if, like you mentioned too, if there are some folks out there who they just need a new unit out there. So they might have 4 or 5 different brands sitting out there on pads, and they have maybe 1 or 2 guys out there to keep those maintained or to fix them when they need fixing. They're similar enough that they're not going to run across anything that's going to bring them up short and make them go, I don't know how to work on this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are some minor differences, right? And anyone can kind of figure it out. But yeah, I mean, the AirQuest units are backed by Carrier quality. All of our units are 100% run tested, and we stand by that. But you're correct. I think, the basic units for the most part, there's not going to be anything too wonky with them. But it's like bringing a Cadillac to a Toyota dealership, right? You want to work on the same car. It's easier. When you work on the same system and you're used to it, you can do it quicker versus those minor changes of trying to figure out where a couple pieces are, a couple extra screws here and there.
And some of that new stuff that we talked about earlier, I want to reiterate the fact that there will be some mitigation devices in there. You're going to have safety features. So if you're out there working on it and maybe your system shuts down, one of the things you might want to see is there a leak? Let's check and see, because these systems are going to be having added safety features that, while again, this refrigerant is safe and it is reliable, we want to make sure that there's an added step for the peace of mind for the people out there that are working on those pieces of equipment, and for the residents who are living there. They want to know that it's not something they have to think about, they have to worry about.
Absolutely. And our dissipation systems are designed where if there is a refrigerant leak and it's a concentration of 20% or more, the system does shut off and the fan actually kicks on and it blows off the refrigerant. So at that point, the best option, right, is to check for leaks. If the system's off, most likely there's a problem.
Well, sure. Absolutely. And so that sounds like a great option for people who are out there who are interested in an A2L option that's backed by a proven brand that's going to be safe and reliable. It's like you mentioned, it's a blend, but they're already familiar with blends. 410A is a blend. The components of this refrigerant are both familiar. They've been using them for a while. They're proven in the community globally. We have some traction for these. So new-ish, but not too new.
Absolutely. You said it best. Yeah. New, but not too new.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit about some new things. I always, when we have a chance to sit down and chat, AirQuest and Carrier always have some things that they're working on. And I'm interested in kind of looking behind the curtain a little bit at what maybe they're looking at down the road for the future that our multifamily customers could be interested in. What are some new innovations that AirQuest is working on, Kelsey?
Sure. Yeah, we are no stranger to changes, and we love testing in the field. We also love collecting customer feedback. And so we have gotten some feedback on the sizing of our coils. So, I can't say a lot about this, but one thing that we are looking at is there's a line of evaporator coils that we are actually looking at making shorter due to field feedback. So we're looking at that, testing it, how can we make them shorter to actually fit in those configurations for multifamily, but also for other customers.
That would be a tremendous feature. I know space is always at a premium for multifamily communities, and our communities are out there, especially when they're doing remodels. They're looking for ways to give their residents more space. And to do that in an existing footprint, they've got to shrink some things. Well, they're going to have to look at options that are going to give you equipment that is smaller, that's going to fit in a space that's smaller. So I appreciate the fact that your company is out there listening to customers, getting feedback, and applying that feedback into researching new options for them. That's a great thing. When those options are available and those decisions are made, we'd love to have you come back and tell us all about them.
I would love to. One other thing I'd like to point out too is we're very digitally focused. So we're always coming up with new digital tools for the field. So in addition to just product changes and hearing voice of customer, we actually have apps where you can type in the model number or the serial number of the equipment and all of the parts show up. Or our connected home apps with actually predictive technology and what's going on with the system. So looking for ways to kind of build something like that for multifamily, we're very digitally focused. So we're always coming up with new technology in addition to new products.
Well, anything that you guys can do that's going to help the maintenance technicians out there find the issue quicker, solve it faster for their customers, is definitely going to be a win-win for everybody. So I appreciate that aspect and that focus as well. Thanks, Kelsey.
Absolutely.
Kelsey, thank you so much for taking time to stop by and chat with us about what AirQuest is doing and how they're approaching this new A2L transition. I really appreciate the insight about 454B.
Thank you, Adam, for having us. It's been a pleasure and really excited to be here with everyone today.
Well, I always enjoy talking with you. I'm looking forward to doing this again soon. So thank you again so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of the MRO Show presented by Chadwell Supply. If you appreciated this podcast and you learned something from it, please make sure to rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast service. And for more episodes of the MRO Show, check out chadwellsupply.com/podcast.